I fell from the roof while we were building the church. The first thing that I remembered was that I'm in Africa. And I remember the slow motion as I was falling with the roof. I remember the trusses falling down with me. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a dream. I can't believe this cannot be happening to me right now. The location is Tanzania in Africa. I am about 12 hours from civilization, which means I'm about 12 hours from any kind of airport that will just take me to the airport, that will take me only the next day to the closest city that would be able to help me. I'm standing close to 6 meters high, about 24 feet in the air. And I'm on top of a roof that we're building. And all I remember is that, it's already the end of the day. We're working hard the whole day, and I'm just nailing the last couple of pieces of wood, and we had one more truss left. And this roof collapses. And as slow motion, as adrenaline kicks in and slow motion starts, I start thinking to myself, God, this can't be happening. I black out. First thing I remember was, oh, and I take a deep breath. And I'm thinking for sure I'm paralyzed or something. I look to the side, 2 other people fell when this truss fell. And one is yelling as loud as he can. And he's to the right of me. The young man that was to the left of me, he's to the left underneath a little bit. He's laying there. I start thinking to myself, what's next? What's next? I see him hurt. People are rushing around. People are screaming. We're in the middle of nowhere. Everyone's in panic. And I'm thinking to myself, God, where are you at now? And as they, take off the wood, pull the wood off of us, and they pull things away, they start dragging me to the side, and they drag me for a little bit. I'm like, no, just let me get up. And I get up and I can't feel my left leg. Well, I can, but it's numb. It hurts. My whole side is hurting. I pick up my shirt, and there's a wound. And I was hoping with all of my heart that it was going to be bleeding, but it wasn't. Because if it's not bleeding and it hurts, that means there's probably internal bleeding. And I understand, and I know from the very little amount of medical knowledge that I know, that if it's internal bleeding, I could possibly die. And shock kicks in, worry kicks in, and I'm thinking to myself, God, I don't want to die out here, not this horrible idea of internal bleeding. I would much rather slash my leg, and I know I could stop the bleeding and I'll be okay. But I felt fear, I felt pain, and I felt alone. That was the biggest worry. And so I limp out of this construction site, barely, and I just plop down next to this tree into the shade. And I'm laying there, and as I'm crying, I'm thinking, God, what's next for me? Do you want to take my life here? God, I really want to see my family again. I want to see the people that I love with all of my heart. I want to be next to them again. And as the pastors that were, helping us build this church, they walked up next to me. They laid their hands on me and they started praying for me, Jesus, Jesus. And I was crying out in my heart, Jesus, help me. What can I do now? And as time progressed, I understood that this wasn't a dream. This wasn't something that happened in my dream. This was reality. And I started thinking to myself, Lord, if you want to take me here, let it be your way, Father. But if I have a purpose still in life, I want to live. I want to live. And so, as time progressed overnight, of course I checked myself. I did all the medical precautions. But the next morning, it took me about 2.5 hours to get out of bed. And, there was no signs of internal bleeding. I was checking myself, I was watching all my vital signs. And I understood that, God is looking out for me. And I'm thinking to myself, Lord, maybe everything will be okay. And I understand that we had a 12-hour ride home through bumps and through trials. And as soon as the car hits the hits this bump, my whole body would go into shock, and it would hurt. And maybe a week later is when the true miracle happened. Not only did I fall from such a height, not only was the fall great, but also the miracle was this, that within 7 days, not only was I able to walk purely, not only was I restored fully, I was able to jog, I was able to run after 7 days. And that was the biggest miracle for me, because I know as soon as I got up, I knew that something was wrong. I'm sure there was broken bones. I'm sure there was messed up organs, but I know that God was going to take care of his people. God is looking out for those that he's implanted, the ones that he sent. I know that if you're watching this today, if you're sitting behind your couch, or you're a student, or you're just watching this on the internet, if you have a pulse and you're in his will, you have a purpose. If you have a pulse, you have a purpose. And if God has sent you somewhere, he'll always provide for you. He always wants you to be safe, because his ways are greater than our ways, and he always, 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 always wants to bless you. He never wants to forsake you. And even in the hardest times, when you feel alone, when you feel discouraged, when you feel like you've been surrounded and the enemy is choking you, just remember that the Almighty God is greater than your enemy. That if the enemy surrounds you, your God surrounds your enemy. And there's nothing that can stand against you. No trial, no height, no depth. Anything else can separate you from the will of God. And if you have a purpose, if you have a pulse in this life, you still have a purpose to live.